Question 1. Strategic planning requires a university to consider various avenues for financial growth. Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University is facing a budget deficit and is exploring potential partnerships. One proposal involves a significant donation from a private corporation that has recently faced public scrutiny for its labor practices. Another option is to launch a series of executive education programs with a focus on immediate market demand, potentially at the expense of depth in core academic disciplines. A third avenue is to seek a grant from a foundation with a specific, albeit narrow, research agenda that might steer faculty research away from broader academic inquiry. Which of the following strategic planning approaches best aligns with the principles of responsible institutional development and ethical governance for Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University? Option A. Prioritize the largest immediate donation from the private corporation, as the financial injection is critical to addressing the budget deficit, and address any ethical concerns after the immediate financial needs are met. Option B. Pursue a diversified funding strategy that includes seeking grants aligned with the university's core research strengths, exploring endowments from ethically vetted sources, and developing executive education programs that complement, rather than compromise, the depth of its academic offerings, while conducting thorough due diligence on all potential partners and donors. Option C. Focus exclusively on developing executive education programs that promise high immediate returns, even if it means reducing the emphasis on foundational academic disciplines to quickly stabilize the university's finances. Option D. Accept the grant from the foundation with the narrow research agenda, as it provides dedicated funding for specific faculty research, which can be leveraged to attract further specialized funding. Correct answer is B. Pursue a diversified funding strategy that includes seeking grants aligned with the university's core research strengths, exploring endowments from ethically vetted sources, and developing executive education programs that complement, rather than compromise, the depth of its academic offerings, while conducting thorough due diligence on all potential partners and donors. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's immediate financial needs with its long-term academic mission and ethical obligations to its students and faculty. The pressure to secure funding can lead to decisions that compromise academic integrity or create unsustainable financial models. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any strategic planning aligns with the university's core values and regulatory compliance. The correct approach involves a comprehensive assessment of all funding sources, including potential partnerships, grants, and endowments, while rigorously evaluating their alignment with the university's mission and ethical standards. This approach prioritizes sustainable growth and academic excellence over short-term financial gains. Regulatory justification stems from the principles of good governance and responsible financial management expected of educational institutions, ensuring transparency and accountability in all financial dealings. Ethical considerations demand that any funding source does not create conflicts of interest or compromise the university's independence and academic freedom. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on securing the largest immediate donation without due diligence fails to consider the potential reputational damage or long-term financial instability if the donor's interests conflict with the university's mission, or if the donation comes with onerous conditions. This violates ethical principles of prudence and foresight. Another incorrect approach that involves accepting funding from sources with questionable ethical standing, or that are involved in activities contrary to the university's values, would lead to significant reputational damage and undermine public trust, violating ethical obligations to maintain a positive institutional image and uphold societal values. A third incorrect approach that prioritizes short-term revenue generation through programs that dilute academic rigor or compromise quality, without considering the long-term impact on the university's reputation and the value of its degrees, is ethically unsound and potentially violates regulatory expectations for maintaining academic standards. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a multi-stakeholder consultation, including academic leadership, financial officers, legal counsel, and potentially student and faculty representatives. A thorough risk assessment should be conducted for each potential funding avenue, considering financial, reputational, and ethical implications. Decisions should be guided by a clear strategic plan that prioritizes the university's long-term mission and values, ensuring that all financial decisions are aligned with these overarching objectives and comply with all applicable regulations. Question 2. Analysis of a situation where a candidate's close friend, who is also a fellow applicant for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam, approaches you, a proctor, shortly before the exam begins. The friend expresses extreme anxiety and asks if you could just give them a little hint about the types of questions that will appear in the mathematics section, as they are particularly worried about it. Option A. Agree to provide a hint about one specific type of question that is likely to appear in the mathematics section, explaining that it's a common type and won't significantly impact the overall exam. Option B. Politely but firmly refuse the request, stating that providing any information about the exam content, even general hints, is strictly against the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations and would compromise the integrity of the examination. Option C. Provide a general overview of the broad topics covered in the mathematics section, such as algebra and geometry, without revealing specific question types or difficulty levels. Option D. Advise the friend to focus on their general preparation and assure them that the exam is designed to test a range of knowledge without directly addressing their request for hints. The correct answer is B. Politely but firmly refuse the request, stating that providing any information about the exam content, even general hints, is strictly against the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations and would compromise the integrity of the examination. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape surrounding academic integrity and the university's admission policies. The challenge lies in balancing the desire to assist a friend with the absolute requirement to uphold the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exams regulations and ethical standards. Misjudging this situation could lead to severe consequences for both the applicant and the university, including invalidation of the exam, disciplinary action, and damage to the university's reputation. The correct approach involves a clear and immediate refusal to provide any assistance that could be construed as aiding in academic dishonesty. This is because the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations strictly prohibit any form of collusion or unauthorized assistance during the examination process. Upholding the integrity of the exam is paramount, and any deviation from this principle would violate the core ethical duties of an exam administrator or anyone involved in the examination process. This approach ensures fairness to all candidates and maintains the credibility of the university's admissions. An incorrect approach would be to provide the friend with specific questions or answers from the exam. This directly contravenes the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exams rules against cheating and collusion. It undermines the principle of merit-based admission and creates an unfair advantage for the friend. Another incorrect approach would be to offer general advice on exam preparation that is tailored to the specific content of the current exam, even if not directly providing answers. This still borders on providing unauthorized assistance and compromises the exam's integrity. Finally, ignoring the request or delaying a response without a clear refusal could be interpreted as tacit approval or negligence, which also violates the duty to uphold exam regulations. The professional decision-making process in such situations should involve a clear understanding of the relevant regulations and ethical codes. When faced with a request that appears to violate these principles, the professional should 1. Immediately recognize the potential ethical and regulatory conflict. 2. Consult the specific rules and guidelines of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. 3. Formulate a clear, polite, and firm refusal, explaining that providing such assistance is against the exam's regulations. 4. If necessary, report the incident to the appropriate university authorities. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are grounded in regulatory compliance and ethical responsibility. Question 3. Governance review demonstrates that a significant philanthropic donation has been offered to Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University by an individual whose business practices have recently come under public scrutiny for alleged environmental violations. The university's finance department is eager to accept the funds to address immediate budget shortfalls for critical research facilities. The university's academic council is concerned about the potential reputational damage and the ethical implications of accepting funds from a source with questionable environmental conduct. What is the most appropriate course of action for the university's leadership? Option A. Immediately accept the donation to alleviate the financial pressures on research facilities, with a commitment to address any public relations issues that may arise later. Option B. Reject the donation outright without further investigation, prioritizing the avoidance of any potential controversy, even if it means forgoing much-needed funding for research. Option C. Accept the donation but impose strict conditions on how the funds can be used, without independently verifying the donor's alleged misconduct. Option D. Initiate a comprehensive due diligence process to thoroughly investigate the allegations against the potential donor and assess the potential impact of accepting the donation on the university's reputation and academic integrity before making a decision. The correct answer is A. Immediately accept the donation to alleviate the financial pressures on research facilities, with a commitment to address any public relations issues that may arise later. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate financial needs and the long-term integrity of its academic programs and reputation. The pressure to secure funding quickly can lead to hasty decisions that may not align with ethical principles or the university's stated mission. Careful judgment is required to balance these competing interests. The correct approach involves a thorough, independent assessment of the potential donor's background and the implications of their funding on academic freedom and institutional values. This aligns with the principles of due diligence and ethical fundraising expected of educational institutions. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of responsible governance and the ethical guidelines that typically govern university-industry partnerships, ensuring that external funding does not compromise the university's core mission or academic integrity. This approach prioritizes transparency, ethical considerations, and the long-term well-being of the institution over short-term financial gains. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the financial benefits without adequate due diligence risks violating ethical fundraising practices. This could lead to reputational damage if the donor's activities are later found to be problematic, potentially undermining public trust and the university's standing. Another incorrect approach, which involves accepting the donation without any conditions or review, fails to uphold the university's responsibility to protect its academic environment from undue influence. This could lead to a situation where research agendas or curriculum are subtly or overtly shaped by donor interests, compromising academic independence. A third incorrect approach, which involves rejecting the donation outright without a proper investigation, might be overly cautious and could lead to the loss of potentially beneficial funding that could support valuable academic initiatives, provided ethical concerns can be adequately addressed. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve establishing a clear ethical framework for accepting donations, forming a diverse committee to review potential large gifts, conducting thorough background checks on donors, and engaging in open dialogue about potential conflicts of interest. Transparency with stakeholders, including faculty, students, and the wider community, is also crucial. Question 4. The risk matrix shows a moderate likelihood of a student submitting work that is not their own, coupled with a high impact on academic integrity if such an instance occurs. A student who has previously demonstrated strong academic performance is flagged for potential plagiarism on a critical assignment. The student claims they were experiencing significant personal distress due to a family emergency, which led to a lapse in judgment and improper citation. Which of the following represents the most appropriate initial course of action for the university's Academic Integrity Committee? Option A. Schedule a meeting with the student to discuss the allegations, request supporting documentation for their claims of distress, and review the assignment in question. Option B. Inform the student's faculty advisor and other relevant university staff about the alleged plagiarism to seek their input on the student's character and past behavior. Option C. Issue a warning to the student regarding the seriousness of plagiarism and allow them to resubmit the assignment with a penalty without further investigation into the claimed distress. Option D. Immediately initiate disciplinary proceedings based on the high impact of plagiarism, requiring the student to prove their claims of distress. The correct answer is D. Immediately initiate disciplinary proceedings based on the high impact of plagiarism, requiring the student to prove their claims of distress. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to support students facing personal difficulties. Pressure to maintain high academic standards must be weighed against the ethical obligation to consider extenuating circumstances. A hasty decision without proper investigation could unfairly penalize a student or, conversely, undermine the integrity of the examination process. The correct approach involves a thorough and fair investigation process that adheres to Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's established academic regulations and student support policies. This approach prioritizes gathering all relevant information, including the student's explanation and any supporting documentation, before making a judgment. It aligns with the university's commitment to both academic fairness and student welfare, ensuring that decisions are evidence-based and procedurally just. This upholds the principles of due process and equitable treatment for all students, as implicitly or explicitly required by university statutes and ethical guidelines governing academic conduct. An incorrect approach that immediately assumes academic misconduct without investigation fails to acknowledge the possibility of legitimate extenuating circumstances. This violates the principle of natural justice, which requires a fair hearing and consideration of all evidence. Also risks damaging the university's reputation for fairness and support. Another incorrect approach that immediately grants leniency without a proper investigation risks compromising academic standards and setting a precedent that could be exploited. This undermines the integrity of the examination system and could be perceived as unfair by students who adhere to the rules. It also fails to address the underlying issues that may have led to the student's situation. A third incorrect approach that involves publicizing the student's situation or discussing it with unauthorized individuals constitutes a breach of student privacy and confidentiality. This is a serious ethical and potentially legal failing, as universities are obligated to protect student data and personal information. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that begins with understanding the relevant university policies and regulations. This is followed by a fact-finding stage, where all available information is collected and verified. Next is an analysis stage, where the facts are assessed against the established policies and ethical considerations. Finally, a reasoned decision is made and communicated appropriately, with provisions for appeal if necessary. This systematic process ensures that decisions are fair, consistent, and defensible. Question 5. Research into the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's strategic plan for the upcoming academic year reveals a strong emphasis on expanding international student enrollment. Considering this objective, which of the following approaches to risk assessment would be most appropriate for the university's administration to adopt? Option A. Delegate the entire risk assessment process to the International Student Admissions Office without providing them with clear guidelines or resources. Option B. Conduct a superficial review of potential risks, assuming that any challenges encountered can be addressed reactively as they occur. Option C. Focus primarily on the potential increase in tuition revenue and overlook any potential operational or reputational risks that might arise from a rapid influx of international students. Option D. Prioritize identifying and mitigating risks associated with visa processing delays, potential cultural integration challenges for students, and ensuring the quality of academic support services for a diverse student body. The correct answer is D. Prioritize identifying and mitigating risks associated with visa processing delays, potential cultural integration challenges for students, and ensuring the quality of academic support services for a diverse student body. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the university's strategic objectives with the ethical and regulatory obligations concerning risk management. The core difficulty lies in identifying and mitigating potential risks that could impact the university's reputation, financial stability, and operational integrity, particularly when faced with limited resources or competing priorities. Careful judgment is essential to ensure that risk assessment is not merely a procedural exercise, but a proactive and integrated part of decision-making. The The correct approach involves a systematic and comprehensive evaluation of potential risks across all university operations, followed by the development and implementation of appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with the principles of good governance and responsible management, which are implicitly expected in any institutional setting, including educational bodies. Specifically, it requires identifying potential threats, e.g., financial mismanagement, reputational damage from academic misconduct, cybersecurity breaches, non-compliance with educational standards, assessing their likelihood and impact, and then prioritizing actions to reduce these risks to an acceptable level. This proactive stance is crucial for maintaining stakeholder trust and ensuring the long-term sustainability of the institution. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on immediate financial gains without considering the associated risks would be professionally unacceptable. This failure stems from a disregard for the university's duty of care and its broader responsibilities. For instance, pursuing a partnership that offers significant revenue but carries a high risk of reputational damage due to the partner's questionable ethical practices would violate the principle of acting in the best interest of the institution and its stakeholders. Another incorrect approach might involve neglecting to assess risks associated with new academic programs, leading to potential accreditation issues or low student enrollment, thereby jeopardizing the university's academic standing and financial health. This demonstrates a failure to adhere to due diligence and foresight, which are fundamental to effective risk management. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk assessment framework. This typically includes identifying potential risks, analyzing their likelihood and potential impact, evaluating the existing controls, determining the level of risk, and planning and implementing risk treatment strategies. Furthermore, continuous monitoring and review of risks and controls are essential to adapt to changing circumstances. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed by a thorough understanding of potential downsides and that appropriate safeguards are in place. Question 6. Process analysis reveals that an applicant for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam is preparing their application. They have gathered academic transcripts and a passport, but are unsure about the exact format and submission method for their high school diploma. They recall that a previous university they applied to in a different country only required a scanned copy uploaded to an online portal. Which of the following approaches best aligns with the jurisdictional requirements for this specific university entrance exam? Option A. Consulting the official Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations and guidelines to determine the precise requirements for the high school diploma submission. Option B. Relying on advice from friends who have applied to Turkish universities in the past, but not specifically to Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. Option C. Submitting a scanned copy of the high school diploma via an online portal, assuming similar procedures to previous applications in other countries. Option D. Submitting a notarized original of the high school diploma via international mail, as this is a common practice for official documents. The correct answer is C. Submitting a scanned copy of the high school diploma via an online portal, assuming similar procedures to previous applications in other countries. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires an applicant to navigate the complex and specific admission requirements of Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. Misinterpreting or failing to adhere to these requirements can lead to disqualification, regardless of the applicant's academic merit. The challenge lies in accurately identifying and applying the precise documentation and procedural steps mandated by the university's entrance examination regulations. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves meticulously reviewing the official Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations and guidelines. This ensures that all required documents, such as transcripts, identification, and any specific application forms, are prepared and submitted exactly as stipulated. Adherence to these specific university regulations is paramount, as they are the sole governing framework for admission to this particular institution. This approach prioritizes compliance with the established legal and administrative framework of the university. Incorrect approach is analysis. An approach that relies on general university admission practices from other institutions or on informal advice from peers or unofficial sources fails to comply with the absolute priority of following only the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations. This is a direct violation of the jurisdictional requirement, as it introduces external, non-applicable standards. Such an approach risks overlooking crucial, institution-specific requirements, leading to an incomplete or incorrect application. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that common international student admission procedures are sufficient. While some elements might overlap, the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam has its own distinct set of rules. Deviating from these specific rules, even with seemingly valid international documentation, constitutes a failure to adhere to the exclusive jurisdiction of the exam's framework. This can result in the rejection of the application due to non-compliance with local or national regulations governing university admissions in Turkey, as defined by the university itself. Professional reasoning. Professionals in this context are university admissions officers or advisors who must guide applicants. The decision-making process should begin with a thorough understanding of the specific regulatory framework governing the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. Any advice or action taken must be directly traceable to these official documents. When faced with ambiguity, the professional should consult the official university admissions office or the examination board for clarification, rather than making assumptions or relying on external information. The guiding principle is strict adherence to the specified jurisdiction and its explicit requirements. Question 7. Comparative studies suggest that candidates preparing for competitive university entrance exams often face ethical dilemmas regarding resource utilization. Considering the specific regulatory framework for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam, which of the following approaches best aligns with the principles of academic integrity and examination fairness? Option A. Consulting with fellow candidates during the exam to discuss and collectively solve challenging questions, believing that collaborative problem-solving is a valuable skill. Option B. Relying solely on personal knowledge and any study materials explicitly permitted by the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam guidelines, without seeking external information during the examination period. Option C. Utilizing publicly available online encyclopedias and forums for clarification on complex topics encountered during the exam, assuming general knowledge is implicitly permitted. Option D. Accessing past examination papers from other universities to identify common question patterns and prepare accordingly, even if these are not officially endorsed by Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. The correct answer is C. Utilizing publicly available online encyclopedias and forums for clarification on complex topics encountered during the exam, assuming general knowledge is implicitly permitted. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to navigate the ethical and regulatory landscape surrounding academic integrity and the proper use of university resources. The core of the challenge lies in balancing the desire to excel in the entrance exam with the obligation to adhere to the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's specific regulations and ethical guidelines. Misinterpreting or disregarding these rules can lead to severe consequences, including disqualification and damage to one's academic reputation. The correct approach involves understanding and strictly adhering to the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations. This means utilizing only the permitted resources and methods during the examination period. Specifically, it requires the candidate to rely solely on their own knowledge and the materials explicitly provided or allowed by the examination board. This approach is justified by the fundamental principle of academic honesty, which is a cornerstone of all educational institutions, including Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. The university's regulations are designed to ensure a fair and equitable assessment of all candidates' abilities, and any deviation undermines this principle. Adhering to these rules demonstrates integrity and respect for the examination process. An incorrect approach would be to seek external assistance or use unauthorized materials. This could manifest as consulting notes that were not permitted, collaborating with others during the exam, or accessing online resources not explicitly sanctioned by the university. Such actions represent a direct violation of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations. Ethically, this is considered cheating, as it provides an unfair advantage over other candidates who are following the rules. It also devalues the qualification obtained through such means. Another incorrect approach would be to misinterpret the scope of permitted resources. For example, by assuming that general knowledge readily available online is permissible without explicit authorization. This demonstrates a lack of diligence in understanding the specific examination rules, which is a failure in professional responsibility. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should begin with a thorough review of all examination guidelines and regulations provided by Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. If any aspect of the rules is unclear, candidates should proactively seek clarification from the examination authorities before the exam commences. During the exam, candidates must maintain a constant awareness of the permitted and prohibited actions and resources. The guiding principle should always be to act with integrity and to ensure that one's performance is a true reflection of their own capabilities within the defined parameters of the assessment. Question 8. Process analysis reveals that a student at Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University observes a peer struggling with an assignment and considering asking another student for direct answers. The observing student is aware of the university's strict policies against academic dishonesty. What is the most ethically and regulatorily sound course of action for the observing student? Option A. Discreetly inform the peer about the university's academic integrity policy and advise them to complete their own work. And if the peer persists in seeking unauthorized help, report the situation to the relevant university department. Option B. Ignore the situation, assuming it is not their responsibility to police their peers' academic conduct. Option C. Offer to share their own completed assignment with the peer to help them understand the material. Option D. Provide the struggling peer with specific answers to the assignment questions to alleviate their immediate stress. The correct answer is A. Discreetly inform the peer about the university's academic integrity policy and advise them to complete their own work. And if the peer persists in seeking unauthorized help, report the situation to the relevant university department. Explanation. Scenario analysis. This scenario presents a professional challenge related to academic integrity and the ethical responsibilities of students within the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University system. The challenge lies in distinguishing between legitimate collaboration and academic misconduct, requiring careful judgment to uphold the university's standards and the principles of fair assessment. The pressure to perform well, coupled with the desire to assist peers, can create a complex ethical landscape. Correct approach analysis. The correct approach involves understanding and adhering to the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's academic integrity policy, specifically regarding the definition of plagiarism and unauthorized collaboration. This approach prioritizes individual learning and honest work, ensuring that all submitted assignments reflect the student's own understanding and effort. The university's regulations likely stipulate that submitting work that is not entirely one's own, or assisting others in doing so in a manner that bypasses individual effort, constitutes academic misconduct. Therefore, a student's responsibility is to complete their own work and to report any observed violations of academic integrity to the appropriate university authorities, rather than directly intervening or facilitating potential misconduct. This upholds the principle of fairness for all students and the integrity of the academic evaluation process. Incorrect approaches analysis. One incorrect approach involves directly providing answers or completed sections of an assignment to a peer. This action directly facilitates academic dishonesty by enabling the peer to submit work that is not their own, violating the university's policy against plagiarism and unauthorized assistance. It undermines the learning objectives of the assignment and creates an unfair advantage. Another incorrect approach is to ignore the observed situation and take no action. While seemingly neutral, this inaction can be interpreted as tacit approval or a failure to uphold the university's commitment to academic integrity. The university's guidelines likely place a responsibility on students to report suspected violations, and failing to do so can have consequences. Third incorrect approach is to offer to complete the assignment for the peer. This is a more direct form of academic misconduct, as it involves the student undertaking work that is not the peer's own. It is a clear violation of the principles of individual academic effort and honesty. Professional reasoning. Professionals in academic settings, including students, should adopt a decision-making framework that prioritizes ethical conduct and adherence to institutional policies. This involves 1. Understanding the relevant policies, e.g., Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's academic integrity policy. 2. Identifying the ethical principles at stake, honesty, fairness, integrity. 3. Evaluating the potential consequences of different actions for oneself and others. 4. Choosing the action that best aligns with ethical principles and institutional regulations, which in this case means upholding academic integrity and reporting suspected violations. Question 9. Regulatory review indicates that a student at Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University has submitted a request for special consideration for an upcoming examination, citing personal circumstances that they claim will significantly impair their ability to perform. The student has provided a brief, unverified statement of these circumstances. What is the most appropriate course of action for the university official responsible for processing such requests? Strictly adhering to the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's internal regulations and guidelines for student assessments. Option A. Advise the student to withdraw from the examination and retake it at a later date, without further investigation into their circumstances. Option B. Immediately grant the student an alternative examination format or extended time, as requested, to ensure fairness. Option C. Inform the student that personal circumstances are not grounds for special consideration and deny the request outright. Option D. Thoroughly review the student's request, verify the provided circumstances against university policy, and request further supporting documentation if necessary, before making a decision. The correct answer is B. Immediately grant the student an alternative examination format or extended time, as requested, to ensure fairness. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's desire for academic advancement and the university's commitment to academic integrity and fair assessment. The challenge lies in discerning whether a student's request for special consideration is a legitimate need or an attempt to circumvent standard evaluation processes. Careful judgment is required to uphold the principles of fairness, transparency, and the value of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's academic qualifications. The correct approach involves a thorough, objective, and documented review of the student's request against established university policies for special consideration. This approach upholds best professional practice by prioritizing adherence to the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's regulatory framework, which likely includes specific guidelines on how to handle such requests, the types of evidence required, and the decision-making process. This ensures that decisions are made impartially, consistently, and in accordance with the university's stated rules, thereby protecting the integrity of the examination process and maintaining trust in the university's academic standards. An incorrect approach that involves immediately granting the student's request without proper verification or adherence to policy represents a significant ethical and regulatory failure. This undermines the principle of equal treatment for all students and can lead to perceptions of favoritism or unfairness. It also bypasses the established procedures designed to ensure that special considerations are granted only when genuinely warranted, potentially devaluing the achievements of students who have met the standard requirements. Another incorrect approach, which is to dismiss the student's request outright without any form of review or consideration, also constitutes a failure. This can be seen as a lack of empathy and a disregard for potential extenuating circumstances that might genuinely impact a student's performance. While upholding policy is crucial, a complete refusal to engage with a student's concerns, especially when they are presented with supporting documentation, can lead to a negative student experience and may not align with the university's broader commitment to student support. A professional reasoning process for similar situations should begin with a clear understanding of the relevant university regulations and policies. The professional must then objectively assess the student's request, gathering all necessary information and documentation. Decisions should be made based on the evidence presented and in strict accordance with the established procedures, ensuring that the rationale for the decision is clearly documented. If there is ambiguity, seeking guidance from senior faculty or administrative bodies responsible for academic appeals or special considerations is a prudent step. The ultimate goal is to balance fairness to the individual student with the integrity of the academic system. Question 10. Consider a scenario where an applicant for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's undergraduate program submits an application that is otherwise complete and strong, but a mandatory supporting document, a certified copy of their high school diploma, is missing. The university's admission guidelines clearly state that this document is required for all international applicants. the applicant has not provided any explanation for the omission. What is the most appropriate course of action for the admissions committee? Option A. Contact the applicant to request the missing certified copy of their high school diploma and set a reasonable deadline for its submission. Option B. Immediately reject the application due to the missing mandatory document. Option C. Contact the applicant's previous high school institution to obtain a copy of the diploma without informing the applicant. Option D. Admit the applicant provisionally, assuming the document will be provided later, and inform them of this condition. The correct answer is B. Immediately reject the application due to the missing mandatory document. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the practicalities of managing student applications, particularly when faced with incomplete or potentially misleading information. The core tension lies in upholding the rigorous standards expected of university admissions, while also ensuring fairness to applicants. Careful judgment is required to avoid both outright rejection of a deserving candidate due to a minor oversight and the admission of a candidate who may not meet the required academic or ethical standards. The correct approach involves proactively seeking clarification and additional documentation from the applicant before making a final decision. This demonstrates a commitment to thoroughness and fairness, aligning with the principles of good administrative practice and ethical conduct expected in educational institutions. Specifically, it adheres to the spirit of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's admission guidelines, which, while not explicitly detailed here, are implicitly understood to prioritize accurate and complete applications. This approach allows the university to gather all necessary information to make an informed decision, ensuring that the applicant is evaluated based on a complete picture of their qualifications and circumstances. It also provides the applicant with an opportunity to rectify any omissions or errors, promoting transparency and due process. An incorrect approach would be to immediately reject the application based solely on the missing document. This fails to acknowledge that omissions can be unintentional and that applicants should be given a reasonable opportunity to provide missing information. Such a hasty decision could be perceived as unfair and may not align with the university's broader goals of attracting diverse and qualified students. Another incorrect approach would be to admit the student without the required document, assuming it will be provided later. This undermines the integrity of the admission process and sets a precedent for lax adherence to university regulations. Could also lead to future complications if the document is never provided or if it reveals information that would have disqualified the applicant. A third incorrect approach would be to contact the applicant's previous institution for the document without the applicant's explicit consent. This would be a breach of privacy and data protection principles, potentially violating student confidentiality agreements and university policies. Professionals in university admissions should employ a structured decision-making framework. This involves 1. Understanding the specific requirements and guidelines of the institution. 2. Identifying any discrepancies or missing information in an application. 3. Assessing the nature and significance of the missing information. 4. Proactively communicating with the applicant to request the necessary documentation or clarification. 5. Establishing a reasonable deadline for the applicant to provide the information. 6. Making a final decision based on the complete set of information received, adhering strictly to established admission criteria. This systematic process ensures fairness, transparency, and adherence to institutional policies and ethical standards. Question 11. The evaluation methodology shows that the assessment of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam will consider a candidate's ability to critically analyze provided case studies. If an applicant finds the specific criteria for critical analysis within the official examination guidelines to be vague, what is the most professionally sound course of action? Option A. Directly consult the official examination guidelines provided by Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University for any supplementary explanations or definitions of critical analysis in the context of the exam. Option B. Contact the examination board with a general request for clarification on how to do critical analysis for the exam. Option C. Seek advice from current students who have previously taken the exam to understand their interpretation of critical analysis. Option D. Assume that critical analysis refers to a general understanding of the term and proceed with preparation based on that assumption. The correct answer is A. Directly consult the official examination guidelines provided by Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University for any supplementary explanations or definitions of critical analysis in the context of the exam. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an applicant to demonstrate an understanding of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's specific entrance examination regulations, particularly concerning the interpretation of assessment criteria and the appropriate channels for seeking clarification. The challenge lies in distinguishing between a genuine need for clarification and an attempt to gain an unfair advantage or to circumvent established procedures. Careful judgment is required to ensure that any inquiry is both legitimate and conducted in a manner that respects the integrity of the examination process. The correct approach involves directly consulting the official examination guidelines provided by Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. This is the most appropriate professional action because it adheres strictly to the established regulatory framework for the entrance exam. The university's guidelines are the definitive source of information regarding assessment criteria, scoring, and any permissible avenues for clarification. By referring to these official documents, the applicant demonstrates a commitment to following the rules and understanding the examination structure as intended by the institution. This proactive and rule-abiding behavior aligns with ethical conduct expected of prospective students. An incorrect approach would be to seek informal advice from current students or tutors not officially sanctioned by the university to interpret examination rules. This is professionally unacceptable because such individuals may not have access to the most up-to-date or accurate information, or they may misinterpret the guidelines themselves. Relying on unofficial sources introduces a significant risk of receiving misinformation, which could lead to incorrect preparation or a misunderstanding of the evaluation methodology, potentially jeopardizing the applicant's chances. Furthermore, it bypasses the official channels designed to ensure fairness and consistency for all applicants. Another incorrect approach would be to assume that the evaluation methodology is self-explanatory and to proceed without seeking any clarification, even if ambiguities are perceived. This is professionally problematic because it fails to address potential misunderstandings that could negatively impact performance. While it avoids seeking external help, it also misses an opportunity to ensure a complete and accurate understanding of the assessment, which is crucial for effective preparation and demonstrating competence according to the university's standards. It suggests a lack of diligence in ensuring full comprehension of the examination requirements. A third incorrect approach would be to contact the examination board with a broad, unspecific request for help with the methodology, without identifying specific areas of confusion. This is inefficient and unprofessional as it places an undue burden on the examination board to guess the applicant's needs. A well-formulated inquiry, based on a thorough review of the provided guidelines, is expected. This approach demonstrates a lack of preparedness in formulating a targeted question and a failure to engage with the provided materials critically. The professional decision-making process for similar situations involves a structured approach. 1. Thoroughly review all official documentation provided by the institution. 2. Identify specific points of ambiguity or concern within the documentation. 3. Formulate precise questions based on these identified ambiguities. 4. Consult official channels for clarification, adhering to any specified procedures for inquiries. 5. If official channels are exhausted or provide insufficient clarity, consider the implications of proceeding with the current understanding, weighing the risks. 6. Always prioritize adherence to the stated rules and regulations of the examination. Question 12. The investigation demonstrates that an applicant for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam submitted their application form with a crucial supporting document missing, citing a technical issue with the online portal that prevented its upload. The applicant has provided a screenshot of the error message and has requested an extension to submit the document. According to the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations, all supporting documents must be submitted by the stated deadline for the application to be considered complete. What is the most appropriate course of action for the University Admissions Committee in this situation? Option A. Review the applicant's provided evidence of the technical issue, and if verified, allow a short, specified extension for the submission of the missing document, ensuring the applicant is informed of the new deadline and the consequences of further delay. Option B. Advise the applicant to reapply in the next admission cycle, as the current application is considered invalid due to the missing document. Option C. Grant the applicant admission based on their stated intention to complete the documentation, assuming the technical issue is genuine and the document will be provided. Option D. Immediately reject the application due to the incomplete submission, as per the strict deadline stipulated in the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations. The correct answer is A. Review the applicant's provided evidence of the technical issue, and if verified, allow a short, specified extension for the submission of the missing document, ensuring the applicant is informed of the new deadline and the consequences of further delay. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires balancing the university's commitment to academic integrity with the need to provide a fair and transparent admissions process. The core difficulty lies in interpreting and applying the university's entrance examination regulations when faced with an unusual circumstance. A careful judgment is required to ensure that any decision made is consistent with the spirit and letter of the regulations, upholding both fairness to the applicant and the integrity of the examination. The correct approach involves a thorough review of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam regulations concerning the handling of incomplete application documents and the specific provisions for appeals or special circumstances. This approach is correct because it prioritizes adherence to established rules and procedures, ensuring that decisions are not arbitrary, but are grounded in the university's own governance framework. It demonstrates a commitment to due process and fairness, allowing for a structured resolution based on documented evidence and regulatory interpretation. An incorrect approach that involves immediately rejecting the application without further investigation fails to acknowledge the possibility of extenuating circumstances or procedural errors. This approach violates the principle of fairness by not affording the applicant an opportunity to explain the situation or provide missing documentation, and it neglects the university's potential obligation to have a process for handling such cases. Another incorrect approach, which is to grant admission solely based on the applicant's stated intention to complete the documentation later, bypasses the established regulatory framework. This approach undermines the integrity of the admissions process by creating an exception without proper justification or adherence to the established procedures for exceptions or appeals. It sets a precedent that could lead to future inconsistencies and challenges in maintaining a fair and standardized admission system. The professional reasoning process for similar situations should involve a systematic approach. First, clearly identify the relevant regulations and policies. Second, gather all available facts and evidence pertaining to the specific case. Third, analyze how the facts align with or deviate from the regulations. Fourth, consider any provisions for appeals, exceptions, or special circumstances. Fifth, consult with relevant university departments or committees if ambiguity exists. Finally, make a decision that is consistent with the regulations, fair to the applicant, and upholds the integrity of the institution. Question 13. The analysis reveals that Aish, a candidate for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam, has completed a supplementary preparatory course that enhanced her understanding of subjects relevant to her chosen field of study. She is currently filling out her application and is unsure whether to include this preparatory course, as it did not award formal academic credits. What is the most appropriate course of action for Aish to ensure her application adheres to the principles of academic integrity and university admission guidelines? Option A. Briefly mention the preparatory course without providing specific details, assuming the university will not inquire further. Option B. Omit the preparatory course from her application to avoid potential confusion, as it did not grant formal academic credits. Option C. Accurately list the preparatory course, detailing its content and duration, to provide a complete picture of her academic preparation. Option D. Describe the preparatory course as if it were a formal academic program to highlight her dedication. The correct answer is C. Accurately list the preparatory course, detailing its content and duration, to provide a complete picture of her academic preparation. Explanation. The analysis reveals a scenario where a prospective student, Aish, is seeking admission to Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. She has encountered a situation that requires her to make a decision regarding the presentation of her academic qualifications. This scenario is professionally challenging because it tests Aish's understanding of academic integrity and the university's admission policies, which are implicitly governed by principles of honesty and transparency expected in any educational institution. The university's entrance exam regulations, while not explicitly detailed here, would undoubtedly uphold these fundamental values. Careful judgment is required to ensure that her application is truthful and adheres to the spirit and letter of the admission requirements. The correct approach involves Aish accurately representing her academic achievements, including any supplementary courses or certifications she has completed. This aligns with the core ethical principle of honesty in academic and professional contexts. Universities, including Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University, expect applicants to provide truthful information to ensure a fair and equitable admission process. Misrepresenting qualification, even if seemingly minor, undermines the integrity of the application and the admission system. This approach is ethically sound and professionally responsible, as it builds a foundation of trust. An incorrect approach would be to omit or downplay her participation in a preparatory course that, while not a formal degree, provided her with relevant skills and knowledge. This omission could be interpreted as an attempt to mislead the admissions committee about the full scope of her preparation and capabilities. Such an action violates the principle of full disclosure and could lead to her application being rejected or her admission being rescinded if discovered later. Another incorrect approach would be to exaggerate the content or significance of the preparatory course, presenting it as equivalent to formal academic credit. This constitutes misrepresentation and directly contravenes the expectation of truthfulness in academic applications. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes honesty, transparency, and adherence to established rules and guidelines. This involves clearly understanding the requirements of the situation, university admission criteria, identifying all relevant information, all academic and preparatory experiences, evaluating potential actions against ethical principles and regulations, honesty, integrity, and choosing the action that upholds these standards. In this case, the framework would lead to the conclusion that full and accurate disclosure of all relevant experiences is the only acceptable path. Question 14. The assessment process reveals that a candidate for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam has performed below the standard admission threshold due to significant personal challenges experienced during the examination period. The candidate, however, has a strong academic record from their previous educational institution and pleads for special consideration. Based on the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's regulatory framework for entrance examinations, what is the most appropriate course of action? Option A. Grant the candidate admission based on their previous academic record, bypassing the entrance exam results due to their extenuating circumstances. Option B. Evaluate the candidate based solely on their performance in the entrance exam and other officially stipulated admission requirements as per university regulations. Option C. Advise the candidate to retake the entrance exam in a future session, without considering any alternative assessment methods or exceptions. Option D. Offer the candidate a special interview to assess their potential, independent of their entrance exam score, to account for their personal difficulties. The correct answer is B. Evaluate the candidate based solely on their performance in the entrance exam and other officially stipulated admission requirements as per university regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a student's perceived academic needs and the university's established admission policies. The university entrance exam, as governed by Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's specific regulatory framework, aims to ensure a standardized and fair evaluation of all candidates. The challenge lies in balancing empathy for a student facing extenuating circumstances with the imperative to uphold the integrity and fairness of the admission process. Careful judgment is required to avoid setting precedents that could undermine the examination's validity or create an uneven playing field for other applicants. The correct approach involves adhering strictly to the published admission criteria and examination regulations of Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. This means evaluating the student's application based solely on their performance in the entrance exam and any other officially stipulated requirements. The university's regulatory framework, which dictates the examination structure, scoring, and admission thresholds, is the sole governing document. Any deviation from these published rules, without explicit provision within the framework for such exceptions, would be a violation of the university's own governance and could lead to accusations of bias or unfairness. Upholding these regulations ensures transparency, consistency, and equal opportunity for all prospective students. An incorrect approach would be to grant the student special consideration or an alternative pathway to admission based on their personal circumstances, outside of what is explicitly permitted by the university's entrance exam regulations. This bypasses the established evaluation process and undermines the standardized nature of the examination. Such an action would violate the principle of equal treatment for all candidates, as it introduces subjective criteria not outlined in the official admission framework. Furthermore, it could set a dangerous precedent, encouraging future applicants to seek exemptions based on personal narratives rather than merit as defined by the examination. Another incorrect approach would be to suggest that the student's prior academic achievements at their previous institution, which are not part of the entrance exam's evaluation criteria, should be used to bypass the exam. The entrance exam is designed to be the primary determinant for admission, and introducing external academic records as a substitute would contradict the purpose and structure of the examination process as defined by the university. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a rigorous adherence to the established regulatory framework. Professionals must first identify the governing rules and policies. Then, they must assess the situation against these rules, determining if any provisions exist for exceptions or special considerations. If no such provisions are present, the decision must be to apply the rules as written, ensuring fairness and integrity. If there is ambiguity or a need for a potential exception, the appropriate course of action is to consult the relevant university authorities or committees responsible for interpreting and enforcing admission policies, rather than making an ad hoc decision. Question 15. To address the challenge of ensuring a fair and transparent examination process for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam, what is the most appropriate initial step for a candidate encountering an ambiguous section within the official examination guidelines? Option A. Seek advice from senior students who have previously taken the exam for insights into common interpretations. Option B. Rely on general knowledge and past academic experiences to infer the intended meaning of the ambiguous section. Option C. Consult the official examination guidelines and contact the designated examination authority for clarification. Option D. Discuss the ambiguity with peers to collectively deduce the most likely interpretation before the exam begins. The correct answer is C. Consult the official examination guidelines and contact the designated examination authority for clarification. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge because it requires an individual to balance the immediate need for information with the ethical and regulatory obligations to protect sensitive data. The university entrance exam context implies a high-stakes environment where fairness and integrity are paramount. The challenge lies in discerning when and how to access information that could potentially influence the exam outcome without violating established rules or compromising the examination process. Careful judgment is required to avoid any perception or reality of unfair advantage. The correct approach involves a structured and transparent process of seeking clarification through official channels. This means recognizing the limitations of personal knowledge or informal information gathering, and instead relying on the established procedures for exam administration. Specifically, this involves consulting the official examination guidelines and contacting the designated examination authority for any ambiguities. This approach is correct because it adheres strictly to the regulatory framework governing the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. By seeking information through official means, the individual demonstrates respect for the rules, ensures fairness to all candidates, and upholds the integrity of the examination process. This aligns with the ethical principle of fairness and the regulatory requirement to follow prescribed procedures. An incorrect approach would be to seek information from unofficial sources, such as senior students or former faculty members, who are not officially involved in the current examination. This is professionally unacceptable because it bypasses the established regulatory framework. Such actions could lead to the acquisition of inaccurate or incomplete information, potentially disadvantaging the individual or others. Furthermore, it creates an environment where information asymmetry can lead to unfair advantages, undermining the principle of equal opportunity that is fundamental to any examination. Relying on informal networks also risks breaching confidentiality or misinterpreting information, which can have serious consequences for the exam's credibility. Another incorrect approach would be to make assumptions about the exam content or format based on past experiences or general knowledge without verification. This is professionally unsound as it ignores the possibility of changes in the examination syllabus, question types, or assessment criteria. Such assumptions can lead to misdirected preparation and ultimately a poorer performance, failing to meet the objectives of the examination. It also demonstrates a lack of diligence in adhering to the specific requirements of the current exam. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a clear understanding of the governing regulations and ethical principles. First, identify the specific area of uncertainty or concern. Second, consult the official documentation provided for the examination. If the documentation is unclear or insufficient, the next step is to identify the designated authority for queries and follow their prescribed communication channels. This ensures that all information is obtained officially and is accurate. If there is still doubt, it is better to proceed with caution and rely on general knowledge and preparation rather than risking the use of unverified or potentially unfair information. Question 16. The review process indicates a proposal to introduce a new, innovative format for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam, aiming to enhance applicant engagement and broaden the university's appeal. Which of the following approaches to managing the potential challenges of this new format best aligns with responsible academic governance and risk management principles? Option A. Adopt a risk assessment methodology based solely on the successful implementation of similar formats at unrelated institutions, without specific analysis for Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University. Option B. Prioritize the immediate implementation of the new format to capitalize on its perceived benefits, addressing any issues that arise on a reactive basis. Option C. Proceed with the new format without a formal risk assessment, relying on the assumption that any problems will be minor and manageable. Option D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify, analyze, and plan mitigation strategies for all potential challenges associated with the new examination format before its implementation. The correct answer is D. Conduct a thorough risk assessment to identify, analyze, and plan mitigation strategies for all potential challenges associated with the new examination format before its implementation. Explanation. This scenario is professionally challenging because it requires balancing the university's strategic goals with the ethical imperative of responsible risk management, all within the specific regulatory framework of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. A hasty or incomplete risk assessment could lead to significant reputational damage, financial loss, or even non-compliance with the university's own internal policies and any applicable national educational regulations. The pressure to innovate and attract a wider pool of applicants must be tempered by a thorough understanding of potential downsides. The correct approach involves a comprehensive and systematic evaluation of potential risks associated with the proposed new examination format. This includes identifying all plausible risks, assessing their likelihood and potential impact, and developing appropriate mitigation strategies. This aligns with the principles of good governance and prudent management expected of educational institutions. Specifically, within the context of university entrance exams, a robust risk assessment ensures the integrity of the examination process, fairness to all applicants, and the reliability of the assessment outcomes, which are paramount for maintaining the university's academic standards and public trust. Adhering to established risk management frameworks, even if not explicitly detailed in the exam's regulatory framework, is an implicit expectation of professional conduct in such a critical process. An incorrect approach that focuses solely on the potential benefits without adequately considering the downsides fails to uphold the duty of care. This could lead to unforeseen problems, such as technical failures during the exam, security breaches, or applicant dissatisfaction due to unclear instructions or an unbalanced assessment, all of which could undermine the credibility of the entrance exam. Another incorrect approach that involves implementing the new format without any formal risk assessment process is a direct contravention of responsible decision-making. It bypasses the necessary due diligence required for any significant change in an academic process, leaving the university exposed to unmanaged risks. A third incorrect approach that relies on anecdotal evidence or the experiences of other institutions without a tailored assessment for Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa university-specific context is also flawed. Each institution has unique operational characteristics and applicant demographics, necessitating a context-specific risk evaluation. The professional decision-making process for similar situations should involve a structured risk management framework. This typically includes defining the scope of the assessment, identifying potential risks through brainstorming and expert consultation, analyzing the identified risks by estimating their probability and impact, evaluating the risks to prioritize them, and planning for risk treatment, mitigation, avoidance, transfer, or acceptance. Continuous monitoring and review of risks are also crucial. This systematic approach ensures that decisions are informed, evidence-based, and aligned with the institution's objectives and risk appetite. Question 17. What factors determine the appropriate response to allegations of widespread irregularities in the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance examination, ensuring adherence to Turkish higher education regulations and university bylaws? Option A. The extent to which the alleged irregularities, if proven, could significantly alter the admission outcomes for a substantial number of candidates, necessitating a review of examination procedures and potentially re-evaluation of specific sections, or the entire examination based on documented evidence and university regulations. Option B. The subjective perception of the examination committee regarding the likelihood of cheating, without requiring concrete evidence or formal investigation procedures as outlined in university bylaws. Option C. The personal opinions of faculty members about the difficulty of the examination, irrespective of any evidence of procedural breaches or statistical anomalies. Option D. The desire to maintain a low acceptance rate for the university, regardless of the validity of the irregularities reported or the established protocols for handling such issues. Correct answer is A. The extent to which the alleged irregularities, if proven, could significantly alter the admission outcomes for a substantial number of candidates, necessitating a review of examination procedures and potentially re-evaluation of specific sections, or the entire examination based on documented evidence and university regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a challenge in balancing academic integrity with the university's commitment to fair and transparent admissions. The university entrance exam, as governed by Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University's internal regulations and the overarching Turkish higher education framework, requires a standardized and equitable evaluation process. The challenge lies in identifying and addressing potential irregularities without compromising the rights of legitimate candidates or undermining the credibility of the examination process. A robust approach must adhere strictly to the university's examination bylaws and relevant administrative law principles governing public institutions in Turkey. The correct approach involves a systematic and evidence-based review of the examination process, focusing on objective criteria and established procedures for handling suspected irregularities. This includes consulting the university's examination regulations, which likely outline specific protocols for investigating potential cheating, such as reviewing answer sheets for patterns indicative of collusion, analyzing statistical anomalies, and considering any credible reports of misconduct. The justification for this approach is rooted in the principles of due process and fairness enshrined in Turkish administrative law and the university's own charter. It ensures that any actions taken are proportionate, well-documented, and based on concrete evidence, thereby upholding the integrity of the exam and the university's reputation. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss the concerns without proper investigation, which would violate the university's duty to ensure a fair examination and could lead to a compromised admissions process. This failure to act on credible concerns would be a breach of administrative responsibility. Another incorrect approach would be to implement punitive measures based on mere suspicion or anecdotal evidence without following established investigative procedures. This would contravene the principles of natural justice and could lead to wrongful disqualification of candidates, exposing the university to legal challenges and reputational damage. Such actions would disregard the university's internal regulations and the legal requirement for evidence-based decision-making in administrative matters. Professionals in this situation should employ a decision-making process that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves 1. Acknowledging and documenting any reported concerns. 2. Consulting the relevant university examination bylaws and administrative procedures. 3. Gathering objective evidence to support or refute the concerns. 4. Following the prescribed investigation and appeal processes. 5. Making decisions based on factual findings and regulatory compliance. 6. Ensuring transparency and fairness throughout the process. Question 18. The audit findings indicate potential discrepancies in the university's revenue recognition policies for sponsored research grants, raising concerns about the accuracy of reported income for the past fiscal year. The university's leadership is under pressure to secure additional funding for a new campus development project, and there is a strong desire to present a financially robust picture. Which of the following represents the most appropriate course of action for the university administration? Option A. Publicly acknowledge the potential discrepancies in revenue recognition and halt all discussions regarding the new campus development project until a complete and independent external audit of all financial statements is conducted. Option B. Instruct the internal audit department to focus solely on identifying any potential misstatements that could negatively impact the campus development project's funding prospects, while deferring a broader review of the revenue recognition policies. Option C. Conduct a comprehensive internal review of the revenue recognition policies and practices related to sponsored research grants. Engage in detailed discussions with the external auditors to understand the full scope and implications of the findings, and develop a corrective action plan before proceeding with any major financial decisions or disclosures. Option D. Immediately implement revised revenue recognition policies based on preliminary discussions with the auditors and proceed with the funding application, assuming the discrepancies are minor and will be fully resolved post-funding. Correct answer is D. Immediately implement revised revenue recognition policies based on preliminary discussions with the auditors and proceed with the funding application, assuming the discrepancies are minor and will be fully resolved post-funding. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's immediate need for funding and the ethical obligation to ensure the integrity of its financial reporting. The audit findings, if significant, could point to material misstatements or control deficiencies that require careful and transparent handling. The university's reputation, the trust of its stakeholders, students, faculty, donors, government bodies, and its long-term financial stability are all at risk. Navigating this requires a balanced approach that prioritizes accuracy and compliance, while also considering the operational realities of the institution. The correct approach involves a thorough and objective investigation of the audit findings, followed by the implementation of necessary corrective actions and transparent communication with relevant parties. This aligns with the principles of professional integrity and accountability expected of university administration and its financial reporting processes. Specifically, it necessitates a detailed review of the audit report to understand the scope and nature of the findings, engaging with the auditors to clarify any ambiguities, and developing a concrete action plan to address identified issues. This plan should include timelines, responsible parties, and mechanisms for monitoring progress. Furthermore, it requires adherence to the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa, university's internal financial policies, and any applicable national regulations governing higher education institutions and financial transparency. This proactive and transparent engagement ensures that the university addresses its weaknesses effectively and maintains the confidence of its stakeholders. An incorrect approach would be to dismiss or downplay the audit findings without proper investigation. This demonstrates a lack of accountability and a disregard for the principles of sound financial management and ethical conduct. Such an approach risks exacerbating the identified issues, potentially leading to more severe consequences, including regulatory sanctions or reputational damage. Another incorrect approach would be to implement superficial or cosmetic changes without addressing the root causes of the audit findings. This would be a failure to uphold professional standards and would likely result in recurring problems. Finally, attempting to conceal or misrepresent the audit findings to external parties would be a severe ethical and potentially legal violation, undermining trust and jeopardizing the university's standing. Professionals facing similar situations should employ a structured decision-making process. This begins with a commitment to ethical conduct and a thorough understanding of the relevant regulatory framework. Next, it involves gathering all relevant information, including the audit report and any supporting documentation. This is followed by an objective assessment of the findings and their potential impact. Developing a comprehensive action plan, consulting with legal and financial experts if necessary, and ensuring clear and honest communication with all stakeholders are crucial steps. Regular monitoring and follow-up are essential to ensure the effectiveness of corrective actions and to demonstrate ongoing commitment to financial integrity. Question 19. The assessment process reveals that a candidate for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam has achieved a score just below the minimum threshold for their desired program. However, the admissions committee is aware of extenuating personal circumstances that may have impacted their performance, and the candidate has submitted a compelling personal statement highlighting their passion and potential for the field. How should the admissions committee proceed? Option A. Consider admitting the candidate based on their strong personal statement and potential, overriding the exam score requirement due to their extenuating circumstances. Option B. Propose a special review process to arbitrarily adjust the candidate's exam score to meet the program's threshold, given their compelling narrative. Option C. Evaluate the candidate strictly based on their entrance exam score and the published admission criteria, regardless of personal circumstances or the content of their personal statement. Option D. Suggest the candidate retake the exam at a later date, without considering their current application or the extenuating circumstances. The correct answer is C. Evaluate the candidate strictly based on their entrance exam score and the published admission criteria, regardless of personal circumstances or the content of their personal statement. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between a candidate's perceived potential and the university's established admission criteria. The university entrance exam is designed to be a standardized and objective measure of a candidate's readiness for higher education. Deviating from these established criteria, even with good intentions, can undermine the fairness and integrity of the entire admission process. The challenge lies in balancing compassion and recognizing individual circumstances with the need to uphold academic standards and ensure equitable treatment for all applicants. Correct approach involves adhering strictly to the published admission criteria and the established scoring mechanisms of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. This means evaluating the candidate solely based on their performance in the exam, as per the regulations governing the university's admissions. This approach is ethically sound and legally compliant because it upholds the principles of fairness, transparency, and equal opportunity for all applicants. The exam's results are the designated metric for admission, and any deviation would violate the established regulatory framework, potentially leading to accusations of bias or favoritism. An incorrect approach would be to consider external factors or personal appeals that fall outside the scope of the official admission criteria. For instance, allowing a candidate to be admitted based on a strong personal statement or a recommendation letter that compensates for a lower exam score would be a violation. This undermines the objective nature of the entrance exam, which is the sole determinant of eligibility according to the university's regulations. Such an action would create an unfair advantage for this candidate over others who met the required score through their exam performance alone. Another incorrect approach would be to arbitrarily adjust the candidate's score without a clear, documented, and universally applied policy for such adjustments. This would be a breach of procedural fairness and could lead to legal challenges and damage the university's reputation. Professionals in admissions should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established policies and regulations. This involves a thorough understanding of the admission criteria, a commitment to objective evaluation, and a willingness to explain decisions based on these criteria. When faced with difficult cases, the process should involve consulting with relevant committees or supervisors to ensure decisions are consistent and defensible within the established framework. The focus should always be on the integrity and fairness of the process, ensuring that all candidates are treated equitably according to the rules. Question 20. The assessment process reveals that a candidate, whose family has significant influence within the local community, has demonstrated clear instances of plagiarism in their submitted work for the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. The examiner is aware of the family's expectations for the candidate's success. What is the most ethically and professionally sound course of action for the examiner? Option A. Directly inform the candidate's family about the plagiarism and suggest ways they can help the candidate rectify the situation before the final assessment is submitted. Option B. Overlook the plagiarism to avoid potential conflict with the influential family and ensure a smooth assessment process. Option C. Document all instances of plagiarism objectively and report them through the university's established channels for academic misconduct, adhering strictly to the examination's regulations. Option D. Focus the report on the candidate's strengths and briefly mention the plagiarism as a minor oversight, hoping the family's influence will mitigate any serious consequences. The correct answer is C. Document all instances of plagiarism objectively and report them through the university's established channels for academic misconduct, adhering strictly to the examination's regulations. Explanation. This scenario presents a professional challenge due to the inherent conflict between the university's academic integrity standards and the pressure to achieve favorable outcomes for students. The examiner must navigate the ethical imperative to conduct a fair and objective assessment, while also considering the potential impact of their findings on a student's academic future. Careful judgment is required to uphold professional integrity without compromising fairness. The correct approach involves a transparent and objective reporting of the assessment findings, adhering strictly to the established criteria and procedures of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. This approach is ethically justified by the principle of fairness and the duty to maintain the integrity of the examination process. It aligns with the university's commitment to academic rigor and ensures that all candidates are evaluated on an equal footing, based on their demonstrated knowledge and skills, not on external pressures or personal biases. An incorrect approach would be to selectively highlight positive aspects while downplaying or omitting evidence of academic misconduct. This failure stems from a breach of professional integrity and a disregard for the university's regulations concerning academic honesty. Such an action undermines the credibility of the examination and creates an unfair advantage for the student in question, potentially disadvantaging other deserving candidates. Another incorrect approach would be to directly confront the student's family with accusations without following the university's established disciplinary procedures. This violates the principle of due process and could lead to legal or reputational repercussions for the examiner and the university. The university's regulations likely outline a specific protocol for handling suspected academic misconduct, which must be followed meticulously. A third incorrect approach would be to ignore the observed irregularities and proceed with a standard evaluation. This constitutes a dereliction of duty and a failure to uphold the standards of the Alanya Hamdullah Emin Pasa University entrance exam. The examiner has a professional obligation to report any observed deviations from academic integrity, as these can compromise the validity of the entire assessment process. Professionals should employ a decision-making framework that prioritizes adherence to established regulations and ethical principles. This involves 1. Identifying the core ethical conflict, 2. Consulting relevant university policies and examination guidelines, 3. Documenting all observations objectively and factually, 4. Reporting findings through the designated channels, following established procedures for handling academic integrity issues, 5. Maintaining confidentiality and impartiality throughout the process.